Welcome to the John Freakin' Muir Pod. Lace up those boots and sling on the pack for a romp through trails, short and long. With your host and Renaissance man, Doc. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail. I'm Doc, and this is the John Freakin' Muir Pod. Let's start off with a reminder. If you are enjoying the podcast, take just a minute, help us out, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're not enjoying the pod, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right. This week, we are taking a trip through time. Have you ever stopped to think that the land our trails pass through has been around for a long, long time? And it's been a host to a lot of history? Well, I stumbled across this week's guest on Instagram, and his account is devoted to this concept. Welcome to the John Freakin' Muir Pod, Roger Gross, creator of the History Through Hiking Instagram account. How's it going, Roger?
Pretty well. Happy to be here, and thanks for finding me. I'm excited to share some stuff that I see historically significant.
Yeah, I just stumbled across your account and was really intrigued at some of the tidbits you were dropping there about some of the things on the trail or near the trail. And so really, really excited to talk to you tonight.
Yeah, this is pumped. I get to talk about some of my passions. So, it's a great opportunity to spread the word, and some of the places that I've been and seen. I got to share it with somebody. I can't keep it all to myself. Nice.
This is an educational episode tonight.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we'll get some silliness in. At least we'll try.
Yes, lots of silliness included. Very good. All right. Hey, have you picked up a trail name during your time on the trails out there?
I spent a lot of time on the trail and didn't really have one because I hiked by myself a lot, and I was out in New England for the last 6.5 years before I came back. Mm-hmm. But people always told me they didn't want to be out all day, so I just kind of assumed that as a trail name because I'd say, "Hey, let's go do this," and they'd be like, I don't want to be out all day. And it's just kind of been something throughout my life that's kind of caught on because I do want to be out all day. I want to maximize my time. And some people went hiking with me and they didn't want to go hiking with me again.
I love it. All day. That is an epic trail name. That's fantastic. How long are you going to be hiking today? All day.
Yeah.
All day. How long is your good mood going to last? All day. There's all kinds of applications for this. This is fantastic.
Absolutely. And my buddy John told me that I should be adventure pants because I wear the arcade adventure belts and they kind of click. Uh-huh. And I'm like, hey, but now that I've been out here, I've been able to spend some hiking with him. I'm saying, hey, man, you're wearing your adventure pants? So just kind of be a little thing. So he says, I should be adventure pants. He could be fancy pants because he's working in finance. And then we'll be the brotherhood of the traveling pants. But it hasn't developed yet. It's just still a pipe dream.
All kinds of concepts floating around out there. That's nice. Yeah. That's nice. On the podcast here, we don't go by our actual names. We go by trail names if you have one. And so I'm glad you've got one. You'll be all day for the rest of the episode. And I'll be Doc.
Perfect.
Okay. Hey, all day. Have you had a chance to listen to the podcast before?
Yeah, I've actually, after our contact, it's kind of renewed my interest in listening to podcasts because I spend quite a bit of time walking around my community because there's some hills and it's good practice. So I've been able to listen to a lot of podcasts. I was kind of drowning in music, so it was nice to get refreshed. And it was kind of neat to listen to some of the episodes, like Yosemite Sam talking about the long trail. And I had those moments too. And then there was a few other guests that talked about Connecticut and New England. So that was an area that I really kind of was pounding feet in. So it was nice to align a bridge with those folks listening to the podcast.
Yosemite Sam, also known as Jeremiah Stringer. Yeah, he was a lot of fun to talk to.
Absolutely.
He just had a different pace of life. Even the way he spoke, he spoke a lot slower than I did, which it really calmed me down. It was nice talking to him.
Great.
And I think Ginger Balls and Scrapbook also did the long trail. They did an episode with us recently. So if you haven't listened to that one, that's another good one to take a listen to if you're interested in the Northeast.
Yeah, would recommend.
Yeah, nice. All right. Hey, I only ask you if you've listened to the podcast because I want to make sure that you are aware of a segment towards the end of the episode called the Pro Tip Insight of the Week. And that's where I will turn to you and ask you to share some trail wisdom with our listeners to make sure that their next outdoor experience is even better. Now, of course, you are expected to drop trail wisdom throughout the episode, but you will be on the hook for an official one at the end.
Sounds good to me. I'm committed.
You're committed. You're all in all day.
I'm in.
Okay. All right. Hey, another feature we've been doing this season is the Must Bring Gear Review, sponsored by the outdoor ultralight backpacking gear company, Outdoor Vitals. And here's how it works. If you were to let a stranger pack your bag with pretty much generic gear for a multi-day hike, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? And if you got a particular brand for that specific piece of gear, even better. So all day, what is your must-bring piece of gear?
I think for me, it would be the Alpine Carbon Cork trekking poles by Black Diamond. I tried some cheap trekking poles when I was first learning how to use them, because it's definitely a learning curve, and they would wobble or make noise. And then I was like, okay, so I want something a little lighter. I was going to go carbon, and then I wanted the heavy duty ones because I'm a big fella. I'm considered a plus size hiker. So I'm out there, and it's funny, just a quick segue, when you're going up a hill and you're huffing and puffing and people are like, oh my God, you're going to make it. You're going to make it. I'm like, dude, this is like the 5th one today. Like, I know I'm going to make it. Like, I don't need your patronization, you know?
Right.
But yeah, those poles for my knees, man, and like carrying a bag and stuff with, I know I can trust them. I don't have to worry about rolling an ankle because I use my pole. Anytime my ankle starts going, I just plant that thing, and they are sturdy. I wouldn't say they're super lightweight, but they're lightweight enough. But I have nothing but good things to say about those Alpine Carbon Corks from Black Diamond. And I will say that I did climb in Mount Washington. I snapped one. I sent them a picture and I said, hey, and they sent me a fresh pair. And I was like, realized that maybe it was my fault. However, they're a great company. They take care of their products.
You gotta love companies like that really stand behind their product, and even if it's your fault, they're gonna back it up and they're gonna send you a new pair. That's fantastic.
Absolutely. And then, you know, you kind of cannibalize that one, because when I snapped another one, you cannibalize and you got spare parts, so that works out. You don't want to keep going back to the well. That would be taking advantage. Spare
parts. That's another classic trail name. I haven't heard anybody with it, but that just jumped out at me right there. Spare
that
parts.
Would be brilliant. Spare parts. Yeah.
And you know what? You know, being a plus size hiker, I mean, you may be a little bit slower on the uphill, but gravity works in your advantage on the way downhill, right?
Absolutely. I'm like a spider. I'm going down. I'm like, boom, 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 boom. And I can move pretty good otherwise. And then, you know, I tell you, all the walks I've been taking around the community as I've been improving every day, because I'm doing 5-mile walks roughly. And there's a couple big hills going up there because it's the gold country. I've already noticed some improvement in my conditioning. The only difference is I'm here at 1,500 feet in the foothills. I'm hiking in 4,000 to 8,000 feet, which isn't too bad, but anything above that, I don't know how I'm going to react yet. And like 10,000 feet, am I going to be able to do it? Am I going to get sick? I don't know. We're going to find out.
That's almost like a pro tip right there. You do not need to be out on a trail to start to do prep for a big hike. I mean, you can be on the streets and doing the hills in your neighborhood. And even though you are out in the country where you are, for those folks who are city dwellers or in the suburbs, I mean, you don't have to be out on a trail. Get out there, do some exercise, take a nice 5-mile walk, and get ready for that hike.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now I've got another segment called the hiking pole, and it's ironically, it is not about the pole in your hand. It's not POLE. It is POLL, like a survey. And I use this hiking pole to judge the level of sanity of the person that I'm talking to. And so I have 7 questions for you. And based on your answers to those 7 questions, I'm going to give you a score between 1 and 100. With 100, you are completely sane, and 1, you are absolutely bonkers. So you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay. Nothing too complicated. And in fact, I think you may have already answered the first one. First question is trekking poles or not?
Yes. I have to have trekking poles or my knees probably won't make it.
Okay. It's another point of contact with the ground, and they're always good for river crossings as well.
I have a pretty good size upper body strength too, so it allows me to push really well or take the heat coming down.
Yeah, I mean, it takes the pressure off your knees, but also going uphill, it's almost like holding onto a railing and pulling yourself up, right? I mean, it's an assist.
It's like a 4x4, you know?
Right. There you go. All right. Next question: boots or trail runners?
You know, I've been in the middle of this because I tried trail runners. The Ultra Lone Peaks, for example, when I did my first backpacking trip, was basically New Jersey on the Appalachian Trail. And those rocks really beat me up. My feet were quite tender, and it led to me compensating, which led to other things hurting. And I've worn Solomon makes their Quest 4D Gore-Tex boots, and I climb Mount Washington in those. They're a little overkill, I think, for backpacking, but it's been tough. It's hard to go back and forth. And I think when I did the long trail, I started out with some Salomon's X Ultra 4s, which I would call a hiking shoe. But I destroyed those 190 miles in. So I still haven't quite dialed in what I'm going to be doing on my next trip.
Okay. So the official answer is unsure.
First is, I don't have a clue.
Okay.
All right. I don't know.
There is a point deduction for unsure answers.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah, just being transparent here.
Yeah.
And, I totally get where you're coming from, where if you hurt the bottom of your foot by stepping on a rock, and that's constantly happening, and you adjust your gait based on, pain or trying to avoid that can lead to other problems in the hip or, elsewhere. And I'm reminded of this by the story of Dizzy Dean. Did you ever heard of Dizzy Dean?
The baseball player?
Baseball player. That's right. He was a pitcher. Very good. Okay. Very good. I'm showing my age, and you're admitting a little bit there too. But Dizzy Dean was a pitcher who took a line drive off his toe. He broke his toe, and he, I think they were in the thick of a playoff race, and he came back a little bit too early. It hadn't completely healed, and he still had soreness in his toe, and so he adjusted his pitching style because of that, and he ended up throwing out his arm, and he ended his career that way.
Wow.
So just a little thing like that. I mean, it's a perfect example of what you're talking about.
Absolutely. I know that I had strained my quad really bad, and then I was like, okay, that makes downhill going a problem. I can still go uphill, but downhill is a problem now. And I was beat up. I learned a lot on that trip before, and that was a couple months before I got on the long trail. I never backpacked in my life until I was 42 years old. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of camping, but never did the backpacking, and that was a great education. But of course, I'm putting all my gear together, and I would say that backpacking is one of the things where no matter what gear you buy, the best gear, all that stuff, until you get out there and use it, you don't know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And the Lone Peaks, maybe I should have tried Temps. They were a little thicker, but the Lone Peaks, they did not serve me well on that. Mm-hmm.
Any issues with the zero drop of the shoe?
No, I love that.
Yeah, same here.
Everything. Mm-hmm. Oh, that was so great. And like, I still have them. And I'll probably still use them again, but I might do some modifications on the inside of the shoe to protect them.
Yeah, I transitioned from boots to trail runners, and it happened right between hikes. My feet were just killing me with the boots, and I said, I can't continue this way. And I went to a sporting goods store, didn't do any research whatsoever because it was like, deadline. I had to get this done. I showed up to a sporting goods store, and I found the Brooks Cascadias.
Oh, okay.
And it seemed like they had a nice, a solid rock plate. It wasn't a rock plate, but it was a stiff sole, which I thought would stand up. And I put those babies on and haven't looked back since. Now, I have gone to Lone Peaks after that, but the Cascadias were a great option.
Nice. So, they were super comfy, and I wore them around REI, and the guy showed me the runner's loop and everything, and I was super pumped to get out there. And then I didn't realize I was going to be walking on pointy little rocks all day. It was rough. And then because I only had 6 days, I kind of I had to make 20-mile days on some days, and I just put myself through it.
Wait a second. They didn't have pointy rocks on the floor of the sporting goods store?
No, they had
the heck, man. Let's go.
It out. But yeah, it wasn't the Northern Pennsylvania style rocks.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Sir, that's great that you're walking on carpet. I want you to try out our Pennsylvania section now. Come over here and walk on these rocks and tell me how they feel. Seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. Tent, tarp, hammock, bivvy, or cowboy camping?
Wow. I have a tent. I like a tent because, you're sealed in, you're protected from the elements. Now, I was spoiled out hiking in the East Coast, and there's a lot of shelters, but out here we don't have them. So I'm going to be using my tent. And I like to be protected from the bugs. I don't have to worry about it. I like to be able to, change my clothes and stuff and not have to worry about being around people. And I enjoy the shelter of a tent.
Yeah. Changing clothes is difficult in a bivvy.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's like a mummy bag. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's pretty sane right there.
Yeah.
All right. Sleep system. Do you prefer a sleeping bag or a quilt?
You know what? I would try a quilt, but I have a sleeping bag now, and it works for me. I'm using a Nemo Disco, which is a 30-degree bag, but I've even been hot in it most of the time. But I like their spoon shape, so I can move around a little bit. But I like the idea of zipping up a sleeping bag. A quilt I might throw everywhere from rolling around. Not 100% sure. I'm open to a quilt, but I'm going to go sleeping bag.
All right. Now, someday in the future, Roger, you have to, Roger, all day. Someday in the future, all day, you have to promise that you're going to give a tarp and a quilt a try and
absolutely
expose yourself to the elements and see what it's all about.
I would love the cowboy camp too. Now that I'm out west and the weather's a little better.
Yeah. Hey, now that you're out west, there is an island off the coast of Southern California, Catalina. It has a 38-mile trail. It's called the Trans-Catalina Trail.
Oh, neat.
And I had the opportunity to I've done that a couple of times, and cowboy camping on the beach at Parsons Landing, man, awesome. Epic. You can't beat it. It's awesome.
And there's bison there, right? Is that what I heard on your podcast?
That's right. Right. They brought the bison over for a Western movie they were filming.
Yeah.
And, a little bit of trivia that they got left on the cutting room floor. They never made an appearance in the film. And the producers of the films decided it was too expensive to bring them back. So they just left them there. Wow.
I mean, it's nice that they're there, but that is the true symbol of America, the bison, as much as the eagle. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
That's a huge symbolism. And I love them. They're massive creatures.
They are massive. There are signs everywhere saying, stay at least 80 feet away. But I always say that, the bison can't read that. So.
Yeah, especially when I saw there was a video from Yellowstone where a bison gored another bison because it was upset with it. And that was the end of the other bison. I was like, wow, you don't really expect it to go that fast, but it was real bang, bang.
Yeah.
I
would suggest running serpentine. See if that deters them if they're chasing you.
And the people at like Yellowstone National Park on that boardwalk going through the bison, it's a little sketchy.
Yeah. Taking your life in your hands there.
Yeah.
All right. Here's an important question.
All right.
You ready for this one?
I'm ready.
Okay. So your food system, you prefer a stove, cold soak, or stoveless?
I'm a stove kind of guy.
Okay.
I got a stove because I'm having my coffee, or I'm having a backcountry mocha, which is instant coffee and hot cocoa mix. And I'm heating my water to pour in my bag to eat my snacks. Mm-hmm. I like hot food.
Okay. Good answer.
I'm not against cold soaking, but hot food is something I can't do without coffee.
Careful there. Careful with your comments because, the cold soak, that's an automatic 30-point deduction. So.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's wild. I don't know. I know that people say that, oh, yeah, it'll be ready by the time you get to camp. It takes, how long does it take to boil water? It takes 10 minutes for that stuff to hydrate. I got time.
Right. Yeah. It'll be ready when you get to camp. But you know what? It's cold.
Yeah.
That's the downside.
Yeah.
It's cold. Okay.
I didn't even get my soup vegetables rehydrated on my first day of the long trail. So I had some heavy fiber in there and my stomach was turning in knots that first night. It was brutal.
It's like having some bark for dinner.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. All right. Next question. Is life better above or below the tree line?
Oh, man. Above the tree line, you don't have any shade, and that could be real tricky. But you get some pretty incredible views. I'm going to say below the tree line because most of the time your water sources are there. There's shade there. And then I don't know. I just like being in the trees.
Like being in the trees.
Yeah.
All right. You ever see a squatch out there?
No, I was looking. I'm sure they saw me, but I didn't see them. Yeah.
Am I the only guy that comes back after a hike and you look through your pictures and I'm looking for a squatch in the background somewhere? Yeah. That's probably just me. I don't know.
Yeah. They're probably laughing at me and I'm taking pictures of the wildflowers and the mushrooms and the fungus and everything. Yeah. I geek out on that stuff when I'm out there. That's part of being in the forest for me is taking it all in.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that an ice cream truck in the background I'm hearing?
No, so I have lots of chimes.
I see the chimes in the background.
It's a little windy, yeah. So there's lots of chimes. I hope they're not too loud.
No, it's fine. It adds ambiance.
Okay, excellent.
Nice,
yeah,
nice.
Yeah, we got a little afternoon wind picking up here.
As we are recording down in Southern California, the winds are like 35 miles an hour. It's been windy for the last 12 hours. It's been nuts. Okay. Hey, last question of our 7-question hiking poll. There are 3 American long trails. There are the PCT, the AT, and the Continental Divide Trail, the CDT. And they all run north to south or south to north, depending on your perspective. This question asks, should those long trails, should they be hiked northbound or southbound?
I don't think that they should be hiked northbound or southbound because depending on the time you're starting, the weather, I think flip-flopping is okay. As long as you're completing the trail, no matter how you do it, it doesn't really matter to me. I don't know do you need a definitive answer?
See, it's a trick question. And if any of my future guests are listening, just turn off the radio at this point because, I'm trying to pigeonhole you into northbound or southbound when the answer is, that's not, neither one of those is the correct answer necessarily.
Yeah, and there's still Washington, Oregon border on the PCT, and I'm sure CDT too is. Then you have the snow down south and on the AT is like, how do you get around that? You know?
Mm-hmm. All right. Well navigated all day. That was a great job.
Yeah.
let me do some quick addition here.
Okay.
We need to subtract this, got to carry the 2, got to divide by 2 and multiply by pi, and you come out with a solid 85.
Oh, that's pretty sane. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be our highest score at this point.
Yeah, I'm pretty chill, man.
So well done.
Thank you.
Well done. Just a little bit of crazy in you.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Some of the crazier stuff is what I do when I'm out there. Like, I'm like, can we cross that? Yeah, we probably can. Let's give it a shot.
All day.
Yeah.
Cross it all day.
All day. Yeah. Pull myself in Mansfield in the rain. That was a hoot.
All right. Hey, let's get to know you. Where did you grow up? Let's hear about your background and what kinds of sports and hobbies did you play growing up? And how did you get involved in the thru hiking cult? And I know you said you came to it lately and you did a lot of camping, but I'm really interested to find out that moment. I love hearing about the moment where people realize that thru hiking or backpacking is a thing, where you put everything on your back and you just go. So tell us about yourself.
So I am from the East Bay in the Bay Area, a little town called Union City. It's kind of between Oakland and San Jose. And I played baseball growing up. I played a little football in high school, threw a shot put and a discus just for shits and gigs. And then I started working. And then I realized when you're working, you can make money and then you can do whatever you want. So those kind of things went to the side. At a very early age, I come from a family of sportsmen and outdoorsmen. So I was camping up in the Sierra about 45 minutes up the hill from here. I live in Calaveras County now, but up the hill, there's a place called Union Reservoir, which is almost the Bear Valley ski area, tucked deep in the Sierras. It's kind of butts up to the Carson Iceberg Wilderness. And we used to have the 4x4 in there, and I learned how to shit in the woods there. I learned how to camp there. I learned how to hike there. I learned how to catch fish there. So, I mean, that was kind of my growth, and was nice. Mom and Dad would take me out of school on Fridays, and we'd boogie up the hill. And they also took me to camping in RVs. We had a camper when I was little. I graduated to a trailer, and then they got into motorhomes and stuff. But we did actually, when I was 10 years old, I think in 1989, we took a trip. We went down to Las Vegas, Hoover Dam, Grand Canyon, up through Utah, through Zion, Bryce Canyon, Idaho, Montana, went all the way out to Custer Battlefield, came back through Montana. We have family in Anaconda. There's an old copper smelter there. Then we went west through Washington, Idaho, Washington, came down Oregon Rogue River. So being able to go to all those national parks, I was hooked instantly.
What a trip.
Right?
Yeah.
I had always had a passion for the outdoors and then, animals. You remember, I'm showing age here, but zoo books, they would just mail you books about animals. And obviously there was your forest friends and your safari animals, but constantly reading on that, going on trips, going to all these historic places, and maybe where I picked up some of my panache for history and whatnot. And then traveling, every time we travel, we try to go hike somewhere, doing a lot of exploring and exciting stuff with that. And then I realized when I was day hiking the AT in Connecticut. I did Connecticut, Massachusetts, and I did New York over the winter because Vermont is a little more rural and it was tough to get up there. There's more snow. I'm like, man, I got to go. I'm only getting 10 miles. I'm doing 20 miles, but it's only 10 miles of trail. I get to see it both ways, which is great because sometimes I miss things and you get to see it. And I was like, if I backpack through there, I could double my output. So that's why I did New Jersey. It started like 8 miles south of New Jersey and Pennsylvania so I can get through the water gap, which was truly stunning. And I was like, well, I'm making some moves now. And then also you're carrying everything you need. You're self-sufficient. I don't know. It was just like free. The freedom of doing that was really exciting. Part of doing the long trail on my own time is I didn't have a schedule. So you just get up, you walk, you hang out, you stop. You don't have to be anywhere, any place. And I've never felt more free in my life.
It is really a simple version of life. I mean, you are breaking camp, you're walking, you're eating, you're making camp, you're sleeping, and then you're doing the same thing the next day. I mean, it's just, it's beautiful in its simplicity.
seeing things, talking to people, talking to the forest, talking to the animals. They haven't talked back yet, but I'm trying to figure out a way to communicate.
Dr. Doolittle. That's another trail name.
I had a guest at the bar and I was telling her that. She was like, I wouldn't tell that to people. You sound crazy. I was like, I'm not making out with you.
You know what? Your score of 85, that can adjust during the interview, depending on what kinds of tidbits you drop along the way. So
yeah,
it's an 80, it's an 82 now. So
okay.
Yeah.
Did I kind of cover the bases you were looking for on that? Do you have a snapshot of who I am?
I think so. Good picture of who you are. And I find a lot of people have an experience near one of the long trails when they realize that backpacking is a thing and walking thousands of miles, that's a thing. They hadn't realized it before. And it sounds like you kind of got that experience near the AT.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. So like, I left the Bay Area at 24, moved to Las Vegas for 10 years. Then I moved to Indiana for a year. And then I moved to Connecticut for the last 6 years before I just came back. So I traveled a lot. Even when I was in Las Vegas, I was able to go to Zion National Park and hike the Narrows. That kind of perked up. I didn't get much in Indiana, even though they have Brown County in South Indiana. It's supposed to be beautiful. But I'm in Connecticut, and I've been lucky that I have adventurous girlfriends. And I don't know if it's just because birds of a feather flock together, but started going out to, she's the one that actually brought me to Monadnock in New Hampshire because her mom picked it. And I was like, what a groovy lady. Her mom was great. But then the other girlfriends and stuff I had, we go camping in Taconic State Park, which is in New York, just over the Massachusetts and Connecticut border there. And they have a beautiful campground there with some hiking trails, but it goes to Bash Bish Falls in Massachusetts, which is one of the most beautiful waterfalls, I think, in the country. I even saw a painting of it in the Yale Art Gallery there in New Haven when I was living in Connecticut. And seeing that somebody painted 100 years before I even got to see it, and even longer. And I was like, wow, we saw the same thing. And that was kind of a historical footstep significant thing where I'm walking in their shoes. And then I'm cruising around, driving through Connecticut one day out in the Northwest in Litchfield County, where some beautiful hills turns into Appalachians. And I see a sign for the Appalachian Trail. And I was like, wow, the Appalachian Trail comes through Connecticut here. So I was like, I got to go get on this thing. So I cover it. And there's only 51 miles in Connecticut. So I cover that quick. And I started banging out in Massachusetts. Next thing you know, I'm hooked. I'm researching the rocks, the trees. Those mountains are a heck of a lot older. They're not as big as the West Coast mountains, but they're 500 million years old and they've been grizzled. And from what I've seen, I haven't done a lot of hiking, but other than that area, the Carson Iceberg Wilderness, a little bit of the Desolation, but it was covered with snow. The hiking trails out here looking a little easier, not at elevation. I haven't done anything mountain peaks 10,000 feet yet, but them trails back east are rough.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive, right? I mean, I've talked to a number of people. I've never been on the AT. I've been in the Sierras, spent a lot of time in the Sierras, never been on the AT. But I hear from a lot of people that say those trails back east are no joke. There's not a lot of switchbacks. It's like straight up and straight down. Yeah. Whereas the trails out here, there's a lot of switchbacks in the Sierras. So
yeah, and some of these are graded for horses, so they're a little wider and stuff.
Right. Yeah. You would think, with passes at 12,000 feet, 13,000 feet, Whitney at 14,500, that, out here would be just a harder hike, but I'm not sure that's the case.
Yeah, no, there's some wild knife edges back east and stuff. And I went through it. And I enjoyed it. It is beautiful and it is stunning, and it's wet rocks, it's wet roots, roots and rocks. And then it's like, wait, some parts of the long trail is not even a trail. Like the trail doesn't exist. It is a slab of rock with roots. And you're like, how am I even going to get up this thing?
With a ladder, right? Isn't there a few spots where there's some ladders?
Ladder ravine was super scary, except for when I got there, I was like, oh, it's just an aluminum ladder that somebody bolted in there. So I got down it, but there was some, I would say, coming into Appalachian Gap near Waitsfield. That's before you break off to Main Junction. There was I'm like 2 miles from this gap, and I know I'm going into town. I'm gonna have a cold one. I'm gonna get some tacos. I got to resupply. I was thinking it wasn't going to take long, but then I'm going straight down a wet, disgusting mountainside there's rods bolted into the rocks. There's some ladders and it's just wet. I'm like, it took me a lot longer than I anticipated. That's when I started realizing, okay, I got myself in a little bit of action here. And then once it broke from Main Junction, that's a whole nother ballgame. It started getting wild. And that's what I think Yosemite Sam said too, Jeremiah.
Yeah.
Things get a little more narrow.
Yeah. Hey, all day, I've got to go back a little bit here. My listeners would be all over me if I didn't ask this question and do a follow-up. Sure. You mentioned adventurous girlfriends.
Yeah.
And I need to just clarify, were they all at the same time? Did you have multiple at the same time? Because it was plural, or was this a series of adventurous girlfriends?
A kind of a series as it transpired. Yeah, that's I'm a one-woman kind of man.
Mm-hmm.
I try to be a proper gentleman, but it's just fun when you can go out and you can build a camp together and you can share seeing those sites, because it's great to see them on your own, but be able to share it with somebody, especially somebody you care about, it means a lot to me.
Yeah.
And I'm currently looking for that next adventurous girlfriend.
Okay. And you learn a lot about each other out there too. I mean, there's no hiding out on the trail.
Yeah. Well, shoot, I had one girlfriend that was so good. She was we built a shanty town because it was going to be rain. I brought a few tarps and she was out there tying knots, setting it off. And I was like, man, you're dreamy. This is great. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. You could share those moments. It means the world. So I'm trying to find a new adventure girlfriend. It's hard to get roots with somebody back east when you're coming home west, and they're like into it in the beginning, and they're like, yeah, we'll go on adventure and I'll move there with you. I don't know if that's the voice that they sound like, but that was the voice he used. But no, man, when push comes to shove, they're like, I'm not changing my whole life to go out there to the unknown. So I'm starting from scratch here.
All right.
Accepting applications for adventurous ladies who
Okay.
also have a little bit of penchant for cuisine and coffee.
Okay. You heard it here. If you are interested, you can always email me at johnfreakinmuir@gmail.com and I'll get you in touch with Roger.
Outstanding. I appreciate it.
Okay. Hey, all day, how you paying the bills these days? What do you do to finance your adventures?
Yeah. So I am currently working in a beautiful little tourist town, as an old famous gold rush town called Murphy's, which is about 9 miles up the hill from here. There's 25 wine tasting rooms. It's called the Napa of the Sierra, but it's a town of 2,200 people. There's only 5 liquor licenses, and liquor is my expertise. And I've just gotten them to let me take over the ordering and doing the beverage program. So I am basically bartending and implementing a beverage program and sharing my unique brand of hospitality with the guests that we have there.
Implementing a beverage program. I love that. That's great.
Yeah, it's like, so a way a chef would create a menu, I'm doing the same thing with fresh ingredients and the cocktails. And I have to exercise my costs, make sure the prices are right, make sure we're making the cocktails good, and they have to be the best cocktails around, because that's what I do. I'm used to I worked in Las Vegas at the Cosmopolitan. We opened that up, and it was a nerdy cocktail bar called the Vesper Bar. And I traveled across the country for the last, 8 years before I came back, opening bars, implementing programs, training people, growing my bartender family tree. Last at New Haven, I was running an Indian street food restaurant called Shere Khan, like the tiger from the Jungle Book. And that was the most fun to be able to, that was the first program that I was able to do on my own. And when I mean program, it's not just liquor, like it's non-alcoholic beverages are a huge thing. We're doing to-go packages, creating bottled cocktails, like anything liquid. I'm your guy. So you might even add a cocktail segment to your podcast down the road sometime, and I will be happy volunteer to be your cocktail expert. Nice.
Just thinking that you're on the prowl for an adventure girlfriend. I mean, what a great pickup line that. I just lost it. Anything liquid is my game.
Anything liquid is my game.
Right. That's spot on, man. Okay.
It's nice. Fluid.
Literally.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Any good bartending stories?
Oh man. I'd
probably too many to count.
Yeah. Working in Las Vegas, especially that hotel, because that was the hottest resort to open in 2010. And we had, I had Gary Clark Jr. sitting at my bar because he was performing a show. Talented musician. Not a lot of people knew who he was. And he was like, hey, man, how are you doing? Just an average Joe. I had Gordon Ramsay come and ask him where the bathroom was. And I was in the weeds making cocktails. I was going to look up and be like, come on, bro. But it's like, it's Gordon Ramsay. I'm just like, wow. I had a kid.
Gordon Ramsay. He can be mean. You seen him on his show?
Absolutely. I think he said something like, "Hey, mate, where's the loo or where's the bathroom?" In his accent. I look up and I was like, a little bit of shock. But we had so many famous people there. One of my favorite stories was I call it the stuffed platypus story. And there was a young girl who had a stuffed platypus, and I don't remember much about it. And there was this guy who was a New Jersey, Connecticut, tri-state area guy with the spiky hair, right? The spiky hair like Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
The fist pumper. And he, I think, took the platypus, did something with it, and then the girl got upset. So this guy I call the Arizona Ranger, a la Big Iron fame. And he was a thin, wiry guy, country strong, like didn't look really tough, but he could carry 6 buckets of feed. He could. And they get into it over the stuffed platypus, and they start getting after it, smashing a table. This is right here in a luxury resort at our bar in the lobby, kind of the hotel, the bar off. And eventually this fist pumper guy bites a quarter-size hole out of the Arizona Ranger's face. And they break up the fight. Nobody ever found the stuffed platypus, but the Arizona Ranger declined any medical care with a hole in his face. And I was like, that is one of the toughest dudes I ever met.
Wow. He could probably take a Will Smith slap.
Yeah. Speaking of slaps, I'll bring up another one.
Hang on before you go on to the slap story. Yeah. Stuffed platypus. I wasn't sure if you were talking in code or it was actually a stuffed platypus.
I don't know if it was a comfort platypus or a service stuffed platypus, because I don't know if they had that back then. But it was definitely something. It was it reminded me a lot of her binky of sorts. And I don't know. I didn't judge her for that. I was just more of the eruption of violence over a stuffed platypus. And the platypus was never discovered.
And just to clarify, was it like a plush toy that you buy in a store, or was this an actual platypus that had been taxidermied?
Oh no. This was like a Beanie Baby size.
Okay, all right. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, she's got a taxidermied platypus. Is that even legal? I don't know.
Stuff like that happens in Las Vegas.
That's right.
I have stories that aren't as prudent, I can tell you, about people. But if you got time for a slap story, I'd like to tell you that one.
Let's hear the slap story. All
right. So there's these two guys at the bar. They kind of look like Laurel and Hardy, and they're the East Coast Paisan types. Like, hey, yo, how you doing? It's living there. I got to experience that, which is really fantastic. Kind of like Tudu Della Sopranos, right? Mm-hmm. And they're there and they're talking to this girl, and the one guy gets a little creepy, said something. She's not as happy, and then there happens to be these giant 2 offensive lineman size characters that are just right on the other side of the bar, and he says something to the guy, the Laurel and Hardy guys, about being creepy, and the guy starts piping up. So the one guy walks over to the offensive lineman guy, kind of gets in his face. I would say the offensive lineman, this guy was big, but the offensive lineman guy had another 75 pounds and maybe a half a foot on him. And he open-handed slapped him so hard that I felt like his face went down, hit the bar, and he came up. And that was the end of that ordeal. The Laurel and Hardy types left, and the lineman went back and finished his cocktail. And
solve that problem.
Security was called. It was just like real bang bang.
Yeah. Moral of the story: don't be approaching offensive lineman size folks with a beef.
You got to be careful who you pop off to.
Yeah, that's right. If Chris Rock had been just a little bit bigger and beefier, maybe that doesn't happen. Yeah.
And I think too that Chris Rock actually is a lot tougher than he lets on. And I think that he just took the high road and was being humble in that because he couldn't believe it was happening. But I think Chris Rock could throw down if push came to shove.
Yeah, and I have a thought that maybe he was, as Will was walking up to him, he kind of puts his hands behind his back and he kind of leans forward, right? I mean, I think he knew what was coming, or had an inkling that this might be something coming like this, and he leaned into it, he took it, and barely missed a beat.
He took it with grace.
He did,
indeed, and he kind of leaned into it. So I mean, if it all comes out in the wash later that was some type of a plan or something, I won't be surprised. But who knows? The world is truly a crazy place.
Yeah, I don't think it was planned. Just from all the fallout that's happened since then, I don't think it was planned. Certainly. But who knows? Who knows? Right? Exactly. Yeah. All right. Hey, Great conversation. Love the stories. If another one comes to mind during the rest of the episode, feel free to tie it in somehow, and we'll talk about it. But we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to get into some tales of adventure and also some history through hiking. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. The John Freakin' Muir Pod is sponsored by Outdoor Vitals, the ultralight backpacking gear company whose mission is to improve the mental, physical, and emotional health of mankind by facilitating impactful outdoor experiences. Outdoor Vitals creates innovative technical products with confidence-inspiring education that empower outdoor ultralight adventurers. Their focus on performance enables you to live ultralight with gear you can actually be confident with. Whether you're looking for an ultralight sleep system, shelter, or pack, or if you're looking for top quality apparel for the trail, you can find it at Outdoor Vitals. Do yourself a favor. Live ultra light. And welcome back. We were talking to All Day. Just heard some great stories from the bar, and now we're going to transition to some great stories from the trail. So let's talk about your hiking resume and what kinds of things you've done out there. I know just from your earlier comments, you've done some section hiking of the AT. Is it a goal to section hike the entire AT?
Oh, I don't know. I would like to, but where do you really find the time a lot of times for that? But yeah, I mean, I would like to complete it because I underestimated New York. I thought New York was going to be kind of easy and boring. I was just doing it because I wanted to keep hiking, but New York was actually really, really rewarding. And even Connecticut gets a lot of crap for being not that great. But you have a section where you come into Rand's View, which looks like what was that? The Von Trapp family. That movie, The Sound of Music.
Austria?
Yeah. And I see like the Edelweiss going on and she's dancing around a thing. And you get up close to Bear Mountain in Connecticut. You have Lion's Head, Bear Mountain. Coming down the back of Bear Mountain is really sketchy. Sager's Ravine. That section from Rand's View through Mount Everett, which is just over the border into Massachusetts, is truly outstanding. There's even a side trail that I did with two of my adventurous girlfriends.
From different occasions, right?
Different occasions, yes. It was something Falls. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on it. I was thinking about it all day because it's such a fun trail. But when you get to you get past Sager's Ravine, you're getting over Mount Race, which is beautiful because it looks off over a valley. Oh, Racebrook Falls. That's what it is. That's a side trail that goes down you can do. And even if you're driving into Massachusetts, Racebrook Falls is something I would highly recommend because it brings you right up this waterfall. It's a really, really tough trail. And then you get to the AT. You could bang a left and go to Race Mountain or Mount Race, or you could bang a right and go to Mount Everett. When those are two really great spots in Massachusetts. Now, there is spots in New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts where it's farms, it's rolling hills, it's easy. There's a few road walks, but that area is just not to be missed.
Yeah. And for some of our folks who may not be strong in geography, just want to be really clear that when you take that left turn, that's to Mount Everett and not Everest.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a different continent. Yeah. And I just want to commend you on the amount of ground that we have covered in this podcast episode so far. We've talked about stuffed platypuses. We've talked about slaps in the bar. We've talked about the Von Trapp family. I mean, we're all over the place, and it's just epic episode.
I didn't even get to the Von Trapp Brewery after my long trail hike, and because I had to see the sights. And you got to go to the Alchemist. I mean, there's a ton of things to do. If I ever moved to New England, northern New England would where I'd be. Northern, the Berkshires and Mass, Western Mass, beautiful too. But Vermont is special. New Hampshire has some special places. And Maine, I've never gotten a chance to get in the woods there, but I've been to Portland and like Kennebunkport, and Maine is truly stunning as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the people are cool.
And good bars too. I mean, because liquid refreshment is your game.
When I was in Burlington, I went to a cocktail bar that had video games. Like, the video game bars are kind of like the thing now, the retro style, but they had incredible cocktails. And I was like, man, I could see myself living here. I could be working at this bar. I open a bar like it. I got to get away from bartending and start either opening a bar or a restaurant, do that stuff. Yeah. I mean, I think I've got my knowledge. obviously we're still learning every day. Nobody knows everything, right? You're constantly learning.
That's right.
But I need to start applying the knowledge, because that's the time that I spent away working on myself, working on my craft. It's about time for me to start flexing a little bit.
You know what? You need to open a bar. Call it Liquid Refreshment is my game. I'll be there in a heartbeat. I'll come for the liquid refreshments and stay for the stories.
Yeah, hot drinks, cold drinks, frozen drinks, room temperature drinks. We're gonna do them all. We're gonna do the whole game.
Nice. And all day. I think there was a Freudian slip earlier. Yeah. Instead of saying hiking all day, you said hiding all day.
Oh, hiding all day.
Is this an escape for you? I mean, what are you trying to avoid?
Yeah, and hiking is an escape for me. And I've found that, like, being in hospitality, it's a lot of pressure, and people are constantly yelling at you. You have a lot of pressure to get cocktails out on time. Did that table get cleaned? We have to make sure we can get somebody else there. We got to turn these tables. So being able to use, and I think that's kind of how I dealt with the beginning of the pandemic. I still worked for the first year of the pandemic, packing up food to go, creating really cool packages of booze. And I needed that escape to deal with those frustrations. And I hiked alone a lot of times because I don't have people to hike with. Although now that I'm back here, I've been spending a lot of time hiking with my buddy John. But that has been my escape. And I've spent a lot of time with, like, butterflies landing in front of me and then fluttering around and not really, like, running away from me. And I'm like, are they communicating with me? What's going on? You got your critters. You have, like, down
to 79 now.
Yeah. What is it? The wildflowers change with the seasons. You get to see it in the beginning, the ones that come up, and then they go away and the new ones take their place. So I've seen a lot of ground in California. I've hiked Zion National Park. Hiking the Narrows was a huge thing for me. To be able to hike, I hiked in Mount Lassen. I've done some stuff in Yellowstone on that trip that I took. But really, it really ramped. Besides all the hiking I did as a youth up in the Sierra there, it really ramped up for me in Connecticut, and being able to do that about 440-mile stretch of Appalachian Trail, and some of it both ways, which is really cool. That adds to the mileage. And then subsequently doing the long trail. And then now coming back here, meeting my buddy lives in a northern gold country, and we meet in Placerville, which is kind of close to where gold was discovered. And then we go up Highway 50 to South Lake Tahoe to Echo Lake. So now a couple times we're trying to get over to Tamarack Lake and then Aloha Lake, which are just apparently the Desolation Wilderness there is one of the most hiked areas of the PCT, and one of the most hiked areas, I think, in all of California. So to be able to go there and run around in the snow, stand in the middle of the lake and look out at these really cool little cabins and stuff, and then walk by, some of the cabin doors are open. You don't break and enter because B&Es are illegal, but you snoop around, you look a little bit, and maybe close the door and try to protect it from the elements. Seeing that I've seen a lot of different terrain, and there's so much more to see. I want to get up more into Oregon and Washington, some of those sections of the PCT. I actually had a PCT permit after I was going to come off the long trail to try to get 500 miles in to make that permit. But the wildfires were so bad. And that's something I think I'm going to have to deal with more often now.
Yeah, unfortunately.
My outdoors. So my next plan for hiking is John and I want to, I got to call him by his trail name, which is
Fancy
Johnny
Pants.
Blaze.
Oh, Johnny Blaze. Okay.
Fancy Pants is the new one we're constructing, but he's known as Johnny Blaze of the group, the Doobie Brothers, with his partner Cloud Ripper, which is my buddy Adam.
I sense a theme.
So we are going to do, I think, from Echo Lake to Yosemite.
Okay.
And
now,
then,
we talked about section hiking before. I mean, if you were to just do 100 miles each summer, and you could knock off the PCT in 26 years.
Not bad. If I'm still walking in, that would be great.
There you go.
I'm doing a kind of a Benjamin Button style of my life. Like, I've always been a plus size guy, and sometimes I've been healthier than others. But now I think at 43, I am the most healthy I've ever been in my entire life. And my blood work is good. My stamina is great. I'm not huffing and puffing. I'm strong as an ox. And it's real exciting to me. I'm going to try to continue to get better as the years go on. So who knows? I could be a Granny Gatewood type, or some of those other cats that are just out there crushing it.
That's right. That's the way to do it. I mean, you do the healthy stuff as you get older. That way, you do the unhealthy stuff when you're young, when your body can take it, and then you get healthy as you get older, and you give yourself a shot.
Yeah, and I can tell you, after spending so much time behind bars, not in prison, but working behind bars, And then when you get off work, you're on the other side of the bar. You realize you're spending 18 hours a day in a bar, and you're like, there has to be a better way. And in Las Vegas, there is no last call. There is no turning off. So there's a chance that you could spend up to 24 hours in a bar, not the same bar, or I guess you could. As I've gotten older, I've really curtailed my drinking. And like, I'm not an everyday drinker. I drink when it's advantageous for me. Can I get a really good cocktail? Then I will drink. Can I get some really, really good beer? Then I will drink. Really great wine. It's just a matter of who's making cocktails. If they're making cocktails, I'll have a cocktail.
Nice.
I'm the only one in my area that can make great cocktails right now, because I came from, usually people don't come from big markets to small markets. They kind of grow in that. So I'm trying to bring that style of cocktail to the gold country. And they're finally letting me do it, and I'm taking baby steps. I'm not gonna
is that a line of people behind your patio there lining up for drinks after this episode's done?
I sure hope so. Or coffee, espresso. Like, espresso is a huge part of my life. I have a machine. I'm the world's crappiest coffee influencer, because I'll go and I'll buy beans, and I source beans, and I run them through the machine. I kind of talk a little bit about them, and I post it on my my normal life social media. I broke off history through hiking because I really wanted it to be focused on the outdoors and history. And I still need to do a better job of touching on more history. I've been just trying to do content, but I've gotten a little busier. So you'll see a return to more historically significant content. I just have to have time to do a little more research.
All right. And I think a couple minutes ago, we stumbled across the title for this episode. It's All Day Behind Bars.
All day behind bars.
And then if that doesn't hook you in, I mean, I don't know what will. So
I can just imagine, just have me behind bars. That'd be good. Just holding some chains. That would be neat.
Now, do I get the sense that you're a detail / logistics kind of guy, or you like to, when you're going on a hike, you just like to wing it, not do a lot of research?
I'm quite a methodical planner in a lot of aspects, and I do a lot of research. That's why I started listening to so many hiking podcasts before I started backpacking. That's what convinced me to try trail runners, which the jury's still out on. But I'm kind of one of those ones. I have a plan in my head. I plan it out super meticulous and methodically. But if things don't go exactly to plan, there's wiggle room, plenty of wiggle room. I'm not neurotic, I guess you'd say.
Right. You can't be a multi-day hiker and be neurotic about sticking to your itinerary, because it changes. It changes. You don't make the progress you think you're going to make, or you make too much progress, and then what are you going to do? So you have to be flexible, I think.
These what are these permit systems out here, and like, you need to be at this campsite on this day. How do I know I'm not going to blow out an ankle or something? You're out of your mind. I'm going to plan that 3 months ahead. I don't even know where I'm getting my stuff. That was like, one of the things we bring up planning and stuff. Okay, so I sent 4 or 5 boxes on the long trail, resupply boxes. First one I never even picked up, because I stopped in Manchester because other people stopped in Manchester. And then also when I started the trail, it was 90 degrees and about 80% humidity. So I was sweating so much. I never felt, there was some record-breaking, I guess, heat there in Vermont and Massachusetts. I was stepping down and sweat was sloshing out of my shoes like I stepped in a puddle. And I had gaiters, I had long pants, I had long sleeve, I had a Tilly Airflow adventure hat, and I'm drinking 3 gallons of water just trying to keep up. And it was like that for the first 4 days. So after that, all my clothes were wet. Nothing dries.
You're like a pail with a few holes in the bottom. You just keep sticking in the water, and it keeps just dripping out of you.
One of the first things I did when I got to Manchester was cut the legs off of one of my pairs of pants. And then when I got to Rutland and the next resupply, I sent some stuff home because the bugs weren't as bad as I thought. The black flies and the ticks weren't as bad as I thought it was going to be. But getting into Manchester, I had a blood blister from my socks being wet and rubbing, but it was under my big toe. So it wasn't on the front of the toe, wasn't on the pad of my foot. I can kind of deal with it. So like a knucklehead, I'm compensating for that, walking around Manchester, getting my resupplies, lifting my toe up. So lifting my toe up, that ligament there, now my right leg is swollen because I came out of that first resupply Manchester. I spent the night in a hotel, clean, showered, ready to go, washed clothes. And that was when I got my first trail magic on that trip, because dudes washed my clothes for me when I went to resupply. And they were a wet pile. So I'm sad they had to touch it, but good on them because they were cool. And I that first day out of Manchester, I went to Mount Bromley in the rain, and I'm doing really, really great to keep my feet dry, not getting wet. Next thing you know, I'm walking up a ski slope, and I'm covered in wet grass. So now wet grass is like my worst enemy when I'm hiking, because you're just going to get wet because you're just walking through it. And Bromley was rough, man. That was an adventure. There was another mountain behind it. I did 17 miles that day and then got to a spot, and I was just beat. I only made it 5 miles the next day, or a couple miles to Little Rock Pond. And that's where I took my first 0 day, because my right ankle was so swollen from compensating by lifting my toe that I was like, I'm going to stop. I'm taking a 0 day at this shelter. It was 4th of July the next day. And that shelter was great. I ran into a little moral dilemma getting to that shelter, Little Rock Pond, because there was 4 double bed size flat bunks. And then there was 3 of them were taken up. And there was a family there who had hiked in 2 miles from the parking lot, and they stayed there and they were just partying there. And I was like, wait, this should be for hikers. But then I'm like, who's to say that the public is not allowed to use this space? They're coming here. It's a public place. They're allowed to use it too. And you know what? It all worked out. I had some dude I met named the Jolly Purple Giant, who might have had purple toenails and fingernails, but he was hiking in those thin Chaco sandals, I think. And he was a cool dude. I was like, bro, just bunk next to me, get out of the rain. And when the people left the next day, they left me treats. The most interesting thing I'm taking a 0 day in a shelter is that I was there the next day. It was 4th of July. I started listening to, the oldie stations play the Firecracker 400, where you listen to all the old jams. So I'm playing those jams. And it was like conducting field interviews, because people come in to take a break and you sit there and you talk to them. So I talked to like 10 different people that day before everybody came to camp. And that helped me. I put myself on a 10-mile a day kind of a curfew, or a plan for the next few days, so I could kind of rehab. And that's what sorted me out and got me ready. When I got to Rutland and it breaks off at Main Junction, the trail gets that's when the long trail starts getting real. And people will tell you that the Appalachian Trail portion is easy, but no, you have Glastonbury. Coming down into Bennington is like straight down. You have Killington, I believe, too, which I didn't get to go on the tower because there's a bunch of tourists there and it was hot. And there was a spring right on the other side. It's just that, man,
Hey, all day. Let me jump in right here.
Go ahead.
Let me jump in.
Yeah.
So we covered a lot of ground right there.
Yeah.
We covered a lot of territory. I think it all sprung from my question of whether or not you were a detail guy or you just like to wing it. Yeah, we went for a wild ride right there. We were all over the place. We heard about ligaments and blood blisters.
Sometimes I just go,
and families, 2 mile hikes into the shelter. That was a romp through just a lot of good stuff there. Of all the trails that you've hiked, do you have a favorite trail?
I want to say,
because you've name dropped you've name dropped a lot of trails today.
Yeah, the Narrows were mind blowing, but I would have to say that the Long Trail would be my favorite, because it's only 273 miles plus the 4 miles out of Massachusetts, because that trail doesn't have a start or an end. It starts in the middle of nowhere. You got to hike to both of them. And just my experiences there, the people of Vermont, the people that I met, I have so many great stories of things that I did on that trail. And that would have to be my favorite trail.
Okay.
And it's the oldest long distance trail in the U.S., which makes it historically significant, as it inspired the Appalachian Trail.
There you go. It's a great segue. We're going to get to the historical moments here in a second.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite moment on the trail? Favorite story from the trail? Maybe an uh-oh moment of like, oh, what am I doing out here? Or just a moment of bliss?
One of my main moments of bliss was right near the end at Jay Peak, because that's the biggest mountain at the end, essentially. And I think it's 40-something hundred feet, maybe 4,000 feet. Mm-hmm. And I'm standing there and I'm looking back at Mansfield, Camel's Hump, and all of the other mountains that I climbed over. And it's just, you have that surreal moment of, I climbed over all those mountains with my own 2 feet, carrying everything I needed. And I met a lot of cool people on the way. And that for me, and I have a tremendous amount of great memories from that, and even some of the culinary adventures that I took. But the moment looking at Jay Peak, and then that was the only one of the few bluebird days, because I would say 3 to 4 of the 4,000 footers, I was socked in a rain cloud. And you know what? You got to keep going. You don't see anything. I have some satirical videos that I took of myself going, look at the view, and it's just rain clouds. I can tell you my greatest culinary moment if you have a second for that.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so I was in Stowe, and which is a phenomenal mountain town, and everything was walkable. And I found this butcher. It's called the Butchery in Stowe, Vermont. And I walked in there, and I was hungry for lunch because I was sourcing new shoes because my Solomons got ripped up. And I ordered a filet mignon shawarma, a farro salad. It was kind of Greek style with feta cheese, cucumbers, and tomatoes, and a Chinese 5-spice seared ahi tuna. And I ate that all for lunch, and that was the best time. And I also picked up some tartufo, which is a truffle sausage, and this very special cheese that was a Vermont cheese, which I brought out, and I had a charcuterie plate later in the mountains that because I carried olive oil packets, Montreal steak, and garlic powder. So I jazzed it up. But that was my greatest culinary moment. And I had some good snacks on the way and stuff, but Stowe, the Butchery, they'll sort you out. They got what you need.
That's not your normal trail food.
No, and then
that sounds pretty dang good.
So, yeah, I'm a foodie, so I carried out stuff. I saw an old man at a shelter, and he had a hunk of cheddar cheese, and I was like, you know what? I forgot hard cheeses don't need refrigeration. I banged that out over a few days. So, I started, and I have my pocket knife, so I'm cutting up salami chubs, and I'm cutting up cheese, and I'm living high on the hog there. In addition to my cool backpacking meals that I made, I started with the Mountain House, like a chili mac or a chicken and rice. And I added corn, I added soup vegetables, textured vegetable protein. I was building my own super calorie dense meals to hook me up.
Now you're a foodie. That just gave extra meaning to your Gordon Ramsay story earlier.
Yeah, like seeing him, like, wow, I was a little starstruck. I met so many famous people there. I have so many stories, but who has the time for it? I mean, I have hours.
Yeah. And you being a foodie and also a history guru, can you tell us about where the phrase came from of high on the hog? You're eating high on the hog, you said. What is the background there? Do you know?
The only thing that I can assume is that you're eating the tenderloin, because that's up on next to the spine there, and that's the most tender of the thing. And even though the price of bacon has skyrocketed, or pork belly, as the fancy restaurants call it, when you're high on the hog, you're eating better. That's right. You're eating the choice cuts. Very good. The choice cuts. Those loin chops. I love a good double cut pork chop on the bone.
This is gonna be a food episode. Nice.
Yeah. Shout out to Herbs and Rye in Las Vegas. Pork and Figs. Great restaurant. Try that dish. It'll blow your mind. Okay. I'm writing it down. All right. Hey, let's transition to history through hiking. Cool. So do you have some moments you can share with us, or some specific sites and the history behind it that you've encountered on the trail? Let me just dabble in my little notes here. All right. So when I'm out there on the AT, right, I'm start looking up information, and I'm looking at kind of the history of the trails, the history of the mountains, the history of where it goes. There's literally this much old growth forest, and you can't see this at home, but it's a very minute amount of old growth forest in New England, because when the colonists came, they whoa, wait a second. Take the hat off again. Let's see the hairdo. Sorry. Oh, look at that. That's the best place it grows now at 43. Yeah. Nice. Everybody who's listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you have to hit pause and transition to YouTube to see what we're talking about there. The wild hair. You can see when he's talking about old forests, you can see how far apart his fingers were. And then you can also see the point where he takes his hat off. Yeah. Okay. No Keep going. Sorry about that. No, you're good. That was an important part. The hair is groovy. Yes. So I'm going along these parts of the trail, and I'm learning more and more about I'm like, why are the trees so small? Why are the trees so short? Because I'm used to being out here 30 minutes from here is Calaveras Big Trees, which is a giant sequoia grove. It's a state park. It's very, very beautiful. Would recommend coming up to see that. And I want to know where the old growth forests are. There is a little one in Connecticut off the Mohawk Trail, which we'll get to. But people have come to this trail before, and things have happened here on all these places, whether it's the natives, whether it's Revolutionary War, whether it's Civil War in some spots, and then going on. There's always history in these locations, and you stumble across and you start reading about them. And some of the sites that I saw, even in Connecticut, like driving up to the trail through Litchfield County, which is the northwest corner of Connecticut, where the Appalachian Trail comes through. they have a bunch of old houses from the 16 and 1700s, and you're just looking at these structures and just in awe, and they're still there. You have the old Crane paper mill in Dalton, Mass. So I came out of the forest into Dalton, Mass, immediately went over past this little ice cream shop, and I had some ice cream because there's nothing better than coming out of a hot, woody day in the summer and treating yourself to a nice cone of ice cream. Now, the ice cream there wasn't as good as Great Barrington at SoCo Creamery, which Great Barrington, best trail town I've been to in Massachusetts. Highly would recommend SoCo Creamery. But this Dalton, this beautiful, and I have this, one of my posts is about this Crane paper mill in Dalton, Mass on History Through Hiking. And this paper mill was, I think, the second paper mill after the Liberty Mill, which was constructed in 1770 in Massachusetts. That was the first one that Paul Revere made banknotes at. So Crane is the official paper mill of the United States currency that's been there since the 1700s. That one opened a little bit later after the Liberty Paper Mill. And I'm looking at this beautiful building and the rivers going by, and I'm like, wow, there is some significant history here. And you see these little moments all across the trail, like even when I got down to New York and I'm in the Putnam Valley and I'm looking at this sign and it says that the Continental Army was here. And then I walk past these ruins and it says there's an inoculation station. And there's a plaque and there's some ruins and you're looking at it and you're like, wow, George Washington contracting smallpox in Barbados as a youth realized how dangerous it could be. He starts getting all these soldiers inoculated, and there's ruins of an inoculation station where the Continental Army was at after repelling the British. And like, I don't know, man, like walking in those shoes to me was blowing my absolute mind to see that stuff. And walking in the footsteps, and then you start thinking about the people that came before you, because all of these trails, some of the trails are built. All of these trails were normally game trails, animal trails that the natives picked up on. So the natives turned them into trails. And then finally the European settlers expanded on those trails. And a lot of those trails are trails that you see are still trails or even roads. Like you would say that the Wilderness Road and the Cumberland Gap down in Kentucky that Daniel Boone pioneered. Well, can't say he pioneered because he followed native trails, but he, as a European, pioneered it for Westerners to get through that area and expand into Kentucky, where they had noted animals that had never been seen by European eyes. The natives knew they existed, but all these settlers had no idea that there was big animals there. And as they got further west, imagine doing the Oregon Trail and getting to see, I guess you see moose in New England, but seeing an elk for the first time, that would probably freak you out. You know what I mean? Like giant bears and stuff. So you're always walking in someone else's footsteps, whether it's Granny Gatewood, whether it's Benton Mackay, or Myron Avery, any of these people who helped initiate some of these trails. It's just really kind of neat to put yourself in that perspective and experience. You're seeing what they saw. Like there's this beautiful pump house on Mount Greylock that overlooks a pond, and I caught it on a great day, and I have the reflection in a photo of the pond reflecting. And those are moments that somebody else saw. Maybe the pump house obviously wasn't there back in the day, but you're still sharing these things with people who are long gone, but maybe their legacy lives on there in spirit. You know what I mean? You try to think about those things, being on trails and following those footsteps. It's just, for me, it's everything. Yeah.
It gives you the chills. I mean, we are so far removed from the natural life these days. I mean, people growing up in cities, you ask, I think they had to redo a standardized test that asked, where do you get milk? The correct answer is cows, but they'd write in, I get it from the grocery store. I go, the corner market. They have no idea, right? They're just so far removed from the natural world, and being able to get out there and experience it firsthand and have this realization that, this is what it must have looked like before the Europeans got here, and it was just the Native Americans here, and trying to see it through those eyes is just powerful.
I mean, absolutely. And you see some of it has changed and some of it hasn't changed. With the warming of the climate, I've noticed there's a lot more blight in the forest. They're not as lush as they used to be. But back east, it's not really a problem because it's like there's constant rain. It's like a rainforest. It's like that's one of the things about the long trail being the oldest long distance trail in the US. And it's funny, it's a long trail, but it's really, there's all these trails that are 3,000 miles long and it's only 300 miles long. What it lacks in length, it makes up for in tenacity. Yeah, which is just totally crazy.
There was a documentary about a woman trying to set the FKT on the long trail. Did you happen to see that? I think it was on Prime or Netflix.
That. Yep, I did watch that.
That was wild.
I come from the school of, and I think that's great, and I really recommend that, but I would rather slow down. I think it was the last episode I was listening to the podcast. So what was it, like half your speed, double your pleasure or something? Yeah. Like for me, man, I need to take it in. I need to say, and I'll bang out 20 miles if I can, but not many people are banging out 20-mile days on the north part of the long trail. It is rough. We'll dabble in that because we're still on the history thing and I have a few other things to cover, but the hardest section of the long trail is right before Burnt Rock Mountain. There's a shelter. It says the next 5 miles are going to take you 4 to 5 hours, no matter how good of a hiker you are. So I'm looking at that. I roll into that shelter at 2:00. A storm's passing. And I'm like, okay, if the storm passes by 3, I'm going to get on this road. So the storm passes from 2 to 3. And I get after it and I'm like, okay, I got 5 hours, 3:00, 8:00, and I'll make it to camp right at that time. And I get up over Burnt Rock Mountain sounds as gnarly as it really is. You're literally climbing up a rock. And I got into a hairy situation coming on the backside. There's actually a knotted rope and you have to make it down with the knotted rope. And that side was a little slippery because of the rain. The other side, the sun had dried it. And I was wearing Montbell gaiters at the time, and I will highly recommend them to anybody because they held all probably 265 pounds of me as they were caught on a root. So I'm splayed on this mountain. Legs are splayed. It's caught on a root. I got my poles in my hand. I'm like, okay, let's throw the poles down there. Threw the poles down there. They were fine. They didn't crack or anything. And I'm trying to lift myself up like I'm out of this chair to get off of this root. But that Montbell gaiter held all my weight entirely. And then I was able to get off and I got down. And my prize for getting over that was climbing Mount Ethan Allen, which is another almost 4,000 footer that had a bunch of switchbacks. And each time you thought you were at the top, it kept going. So I finally made it into camp at 8:00. And that was right before Camel's Hump, which is another tough part. But that was my toughest day on the trail. And I don't know if maybe mentally because I struggled with that gator on that route and I was thinking I was going to die. It added to that, but it was definitely, that is the hardest part of the long trail. And don't ever skip it. Some people want to skip it. Don't skip it. You got to rock it out.
Got to have a full experience there.
Yeah.
The full hanging by a gator from a route experience.
Yeah. And back to more some historical stuff. Also in New York, the old Albany Post Road. I didn't know much about this when I got there. I pull in, I'm going this road, and it's a dirt road. Then I realized this dirt road is almost 400 years old. It was there when it was the New Netherland, a colony of the Dutch between New York and Albany, so they could drive the mail. And at one point, it was only very, very narrow. It was a game trail that the natives had used. So the natives, I think, carried the mail for the first 2 years going across there. And I'm driving on this road, and the AT goes right across it. And I'm like, wait. The trail's not the only draw to this here. And this road still hasn't been paved for the 6.6 miles of the section. There's billboards everywhere. It says, don't pave it. Keep it the same. There's still mile markers that have been restored that are historically significant. And like those are types of things that you don't even expect to see when you go hiking. But when you run across them, it's like, oh my goodness, this is absolutely fantastic.
Now hang on all day. So it's not paved, but there's billboards along it?
Yeah, and the houses, because people live across it. There's some McMansions.
Okay.
There's some serious McMansions on that. And the trail does cut between kind of where the backyards are. And it's the thing about New York on the AT is that it's 900 feet up, 900 feet down, 900 feet up, 900 feet down. It is not very nice. It is tough. It's a lot tougher than people make it out to be because I think the highest point is 1,300 feet at best. And I might be overestimating. Now, Mount Marcy in the Adirondacks, 5,000 feet. for something like that. But the AT doesn't have that section. It's like that was tremendously nerdy. And then also, when you start going down that rabbit hole of like who's been on this trail before me, so you start looking it up and you go down that rabbit hole of research. And that also made me think. I'd forgotten my hiking to talk about the Adirondacks and the Catskills.
Mm-hmm.
My other adventurous girlfriend we took some trips up there, and upstate New York is absolutely beautiful, and the hiking there is great. I would highly recommend. We went to both in the winter, and then the Adirondacks. We had a cabin within the park. Something historically significant about Adirondack Park is it was the first. I know it was his first state park in New York, but there's something significant about it being maybe the first preserved area, conservation area, because Yosemite came after that with Muir and the president with the glasses, Teddy.
Yep.
Yeah. So that is historically significant, and also the Catskills is historically significant because it was the playground of the New Yorkers who would go up there, and they have some great mountains there too. There's a little town called Margaretville. If you ever find yourself in the Catskills and Margaretville, there is a little cafe, a French cafe called Cafe Marguerite, that you should definitely stop in. Some of the best pastries and beautiful coffees. The chef from New York has a spot out there. Really cool dude.
Now, you mentioned doing some research about the people who have been on the trail before you. And then you kind of dived off into a side trail. Who were some of the names you discovered have been on that trail that we would recognize?
Well, we looking at like Granny Gatewood on the AT was great. And then also, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was the first guy to do the AT in its entirety. He was a soldier, came back from World War II. And I think that's how he dealt with his PTSD. And nobody believed him that he actually did it. So he had to go sit down with the people on the trail and show him his notes or explain to him different things before they gave him credit. Wow. I think he did it 3 more times too, which is absolutely fantastic. And then you think about all of the people that I see on social media that have been on that trail. And I'm like, so I've shared that moment with you at a different time and seen those sites, and just people are constantly on those trails, and then they move the trails, right? So in Connecticut, there's a 25-mile stretch of the AT that is now the section in Kent near Kent Falls, where it is an ADA accessible area where there's a little spot where you could run a wheelchair out there so somebody could experience the Appalachian Trail, which I think is absolutely fantastic. But I discovered this as the Mohawk Trail, as a 25-mile side trail. So all of these people went on the AT on this trail. They weren't on the new stretch. So I was able to grab one of my friends, who is a very adventurous young lady named Michaela, which we've never dated. Think about it. I probably would have dated her. We never had that interaction. We were just friends through work, through hospitality. And she would just go on rad adventures with me. She did part of the AT with me. And I took her on this Mohawk Trail, and we banged it out 25 miles in one day. So it was kind of like a through hike that day. And there is some significant historical things on that trail, because there is the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC. They built a lot of the shelters in New England as part of the New Deal. So you have this Red Mountain shelter that's there from 1933 that's still standing there. That is just tremendously beautiful to see, something that was such a part of our recovery after the Depression. And she banged that out with me. And there's still 2 trail markers. That's, the Appalachian Trail markers, how they put them in the ground, they say AT and they're metal. Right. There's still 2 on there. And that was some tough hiking. It's just that I think that the landowners wanted to move it because they were scared that the National Scenic Trail Committee would annex their land. I went through some farmland, an old growth forest, cruised around some serious hiking through some different ravines. So anybody that hears this and is going to do the Appalachian Trail, if you've got the time, break off and do the Mohawk Trail as a 25-mile side trail. And it is mind blowing. Some of the stuff you'll see there, you'll really, really enjoy it.
Sounds like it's well worth it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Would highly recommend.
Fascinating stuff all day. Fascinating. What's your next adventure? What do you got planned?
You know what? I'm probably gonna get with Fancy Pants or Johnny Blaze, and we're gonna just do some more fun day hiking and then go eat snacks after it. But I think now that we got pounded with snow at the end of December, it was like Snowmageddon, a bunch of snow, broke all the snow records for the time, and then we barely got anything else.
That's right. Yeah, dried up, stopped.
I don't think there's much snow up there, so I reckon we might be able to go back up to Echo Lake and bang out some miles on the PCT. We had a hard time getting very far because where the PCT cuts through from Echo Lake, it's kind of cut into the side of the hill, and it's covered in snow. So we kind of followed the trail the best we could, but you just run out of time because you're snowshoeing a lot of time and using spikes, and you can't get it. So I want to see that Aloha Lakes before it gets too crowded, and maybe do some overnight stuff.
Yeah, I was kind of worried about my High Sierra Trail permit in late June when all the snow was hitting, and then it stopped. So I think I'm gonna be fine. So
yeah, you're still there still could be snow up there. And also I want to get back up Highway 4 to Ebbets Pass and the PCT there, and also back in that Carson Iceberg Wilderness. There's kind of a 14-mile loop from Union Reservoir where I grew up camping. It goes around for a place called Elephant Rock and goes up to Lake Alpine, which is where they close Highway 4 until all the snow melts. And that Ebbets Pass, that Highway 4 there, it's like not a road that's got a stripe on it. It's a road that narrows in kind of a one-lane road. And there's some really beautiful sights, but it's also pretty sketchy. But that's how you get back up to Reno without having to go all the way around Sacramento way and going up.
Got it.
I think I'm going to be dabbling in some High Sierra action. And then
nice.
I gotta get schooled down on the trees. I gotta get schooled down on the wildflowers. You know what I mean? I'm back out west now.
Nice. Hey, all day. You know where we are?
We're at the part where we're gonna talk about some stuff.
That's right. We talk about some stuff. We're at that time of the episode where you're going to share your pro tip insight of the week. What bit of trail wisdom can you share with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better?
All right. Now, this is the one where I break out. This is the one where I give you my secret tip, right?
That's right.
Okay. So the trail runners, a little thin for me, especially as a plus size guy. They may work for the skinny kids. That's great. Try the tips. But I bought some very, very thin cutting boards that are flexible. And I cut that out in the shape of my insole. And I put that in my shoe under my insole. And the Solomons that I did on the long trail, I couldn't do it in New Jersey because I was beat. My feet hurt. But the Solomons that I had, the X Ultra 4s, I put that under there. And man, they made a considerable difference bouncing around on pointy stuff. And then when I got to Stowe, by the time before I got over Mansfield, between being wet and walking through mud all the time, all of my shoes where the fabric was ripped apart. They were open-toed shoes. And they stunk so bad because they're constantly wet. So I had to throw them away. But I took that plastic rock guard that I made out, and there were some serious points in that. And I was very thankful. So that is my pro tip, especially if you're a plus size hiker and you have a little addition for your thick insole. They're like $5, I think, at Walmart for a pack of 3. Cut that out. And you might want to sand on the edges if you got Gore-Tex or something to protect it. But that was a huge thing for me. And that's something I'd recommend for everyone who needs a little more of a rock guard.
Homemade rock guards. That is homemade rock plate. That's a first on the podcast here. Congratulations.
Good. I was hoping that my pro tip was going to be awesome. So I hope he picks up on that and uses that. I will tell you, when I was at Stowe, I did pick up some Hoka Anakapas, and they had just come out. Mm-hmm. And they got away from like trail runners and made more of a boot trail runner. And they were absolutely fantastic. I love the cushion on them. They're a little unwieldy. I tried to snowshoe in them, and I would go back to my Solomons, the Solomon Quests. The X Ultra 4s, I had to toss them 190 miles in. Going over Mansfield in the rain was scary because I had to pull myself over a crevasse. I know I'm just a quick story on a segue, so I know we're on task. But we got to that crevasse where we had to pull over, and then my hiking buddy that was with me that day that I had stayed with, called Outlaw. She's a great person. First person I met 10 miles in a long trail. We were together a lot of the times. She noped out. She was like, nope, not doing it. So I pulled myself up over that crevasse, and I got to the booth or whatever, the ranger state, not a ranger state. It's like a education thing where they talk about the mountain stuff.
Okay.
And the caretaker there made me a hot cocoa, and I had that, and that got me down. I knew that I was not going to be denied because once I got down that hill, I was going to Stowe, and had cold beer, hot showers, warm food. And that's where I met the Long Trail River, because Mount Mansfield is the biggest mountain in Vermont, and that water had to go somewhere. I came over that in a storm, and it luckily wasn't slippery like wet stuff could be, but it was nice having those open-toed Solomon sandals. And I will say that Solomon did give me a full credit, so I purchased another pair of Quest 4Ds boots for that.
So we had crevasse, we had some cocoa, we had some open-toed Solomons.
Yeah, it was on the Long Trail River. That was kind of neat, because it was I never seen anything like that hiking in the river. But if you hike the Long Trail, you need to bring extra socks. And
another pro tip here.
Yeah, you got to be ready, because it's wet. You're not gonna walk it dry there, man. It is. You prepare to be disgustingly wet.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I got one more pro tip for you.
Okay.
Before you take your new girlfriend out for a hike, or boyfriend, and they say they like hiking, you should vet them out first, because I brought my new girlfriend to New Hampshire, and we did Mount Washington, which is the biggest mountain in the Northeast, on a day hike, and she was MFing me the whole way. But I said, when we got to the top and you saw that view, you're going to love it when we get to the bottom. And I had to help her. I had to wait for her a little bit, which gave me a break, so I wasn't really mad about it. But we got to the bottom. We were hiking in the dark for an hour, because I was like, it's only like 7 or 8 miles. We'll be able to bang that out in a few hours. And that's some vertical gain. I think it was almost 4,000 feet of vertical gain up the Ammo Trail, which was tough and beautiful, and then came around to the Jewel Trail. But we did it. She was happy, but yeah, she wouldn't go hiking with me much after that.
You got to vet them out, otherwise you're looking for a new adventure girlfriend.
Yeah, she's quit on you. Yeah.
All right, so there you have it. That's it. This episode is just about in the books. Hope our listeners enjoyed our time with All Day. I want to thank him for joining us this week. All Day, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates on your latest adventures?
I would say the best thing to be would be History Through Hiking on Instagram, and it's through THRU, like through hiking. And then also, if you want to learn more about me as a human, Cocktail Raj on Instagram. Cocktail ROG is my main account, where I talk all about coffee and cuisine, and usually the goofy adventures I take. And sometimes I cross over just to try to get more people interested in what I'm doing for the hiking. But Instagram's the best. I do send it to my Facebook. I don't look at Facebook at all. Just send it to that. But you can find me on Facebook, and you'll see my content go through to that. But I think Instagram's the best, and I look forward to putting out more and exciting historical content. And then also, if you out there in the listening world or the viewing world on YouTube have ideas for me, or want to join me and do some cool history adventure stuff, I'm always down for that. Reach out to me, and birds of a feather flock together.
Okay. Remember to check out the pod on social media as well. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And if you have comments or clips you want to share, you can send it to me at johnfreakinmuir@gmail.com. All Day, I'm also looking to you to share a recommendation for a book, a movie, documentary, some sort of adventure media that'll keep our listeners connected to the outdoor adventures. We're calling this our adventure media recommendation. What do you have for us? Okay, I actually have 2 today. I don't know if that's allowed, but they're books. Okay. One is called On Trails by Robert Moore, and the other is The Adventures in the Wilderness by W.H.H. Murray. We'll start with On Trails. Now, On Trails, this dude was hiking the Appalachian Trail. This isn't necessarily a hiking book. It's more of like a, whoa, open your mind book. And this guy starts thinking about how everything has come before you, down to like the amoebas and microorganisms. Everything is on a path. And you're taking that path and following that path, and how the natives followed the animals, and how we followed the natives, and then how everybody's on their own path, and how they intertwine. It's a tremendous book to read, and it's not straight hiking. It's more of just an eye-opening book. Right. I read that book. It's profound. It's right. It covers a lot of ground and really opens your eyes. Highly recommend that. And then this other book is Adventures in the Wilderness, W.H.H. Murray. So this is the world's first, maybe not the world's first, but I guess so. It's the very first book on camping in America. Camping started out as a kind of religious retreat for people to go out. And this guy I think he actually started as a pastor or a religious person, so to speak. I'm not really good with religion, so I don't know much. But it was really originally published in 1869. And it talks about the gear you should bring, how you should interact,
all of the really, really cool things that we kind of now do on a daily basis. That was the world's first camping manual. And I just think that that is just such a neat kind of thing. And it's historically significant. So that's why it's in my book collection.
Yeah. I mean, two books right there that are historically significant, deal with history. I mean, what a surprise coming from you.
You know, and don't get me wrong, the National Geographic trail maps and the Fallon guides are great for exploring, but these books really put you in that mindset and they kind of take you away and you're there visualizing that. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the high trips put on by the Sierra Club?
No, but
you gotta check that out. It has nothing to do with Johnny Blaze and his group, but the Sierra Club would organize these high trips where it was a concerted effort to get more of America exposed to the backcountry and what it was all about. And it was led by a bunch of educators who had started up the Sierra Club, a bunch of professors from the University of California, Berkeley, and they'd take these groups out and they'd have different sessions on different aspects of what they were seeing and interacting with out there. And they would go for, a few weeks, and it's just kind of ties in with what you were talking about there, a little bit of history, a little bit of exposing people to the natural world. And I think there's an episode I did on it in season 1 on the high trips. It's a short episode. I think it's only like 20, 25 minutes, but fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I definitely want to look at that. That's really awesome.
Yeah. Hey, and before we wrap things up, I've got one more segment for you called "What Have I Not Asked You That You're Dying to Tell us about?"
I think that I didn't get a chance in my history to talk about the Transcendentalists. Did I say that right? I don't know.
It's close. It's close. Yeah.
Yeah. With Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Looking at Mount Monadnock, and those dudes were the first kind of hippies.
That's right.
In America, because they weren't vibing with the 1700s peoples. They started their own, and they also had a respect for nature and individualism. And that, to me, it was just like, these guys were hippies before the Summer of Love, and they were going against the grain, and they were like, we don't want to cut all these trees down. We want to immerse ourselves in these trees and get their good tidings, a la Muir. That, to me, is something that I'm glad that we had this segment, because I wanted to touch on that. And if you go back and you look at some of their writings, even Herman Melville using Mount Greylock, kind of seeing the whale to write Moby Dick, supposedly influenced that. And, he went there. But those dudes spending time, and those guys were the literary minds and thinkers of the time, and just immersing themselves in nature and accepting it for what it is, and really appreciating it. I think it led to a lot of what happened in conservation.
Yeah, I think it was Emerson that wrote about the concept of being a transparent eyeball, which is just being the ultimate observer out there in nature, just soaking it all up, and you're not intruding because you're transparent, and just kind of being one with nature and soaking it up and observing it all and taking it all in. So yeah, I'm glad that you came back to that. Glad I asked that question.
Thank you. And I would also like to see if there's anybody who's listening to this that's in my area that is a geologist, an arborist, a fungi specialist, butterfly, any of those people that you want to go out hiking, you want to talk my ear off and tell me what I'm looking at, I'm for it, because that would make me a much better outdoor person. Yeah.
Okay. You can reach him at Cocktail Raj or History Through Hiking.
Through hiking.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, that is a wrap from the John Freaking Muir Studio. Any shout outs to friends and family all day?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely have to shoot out to Michaela Roy, who was super dope hiking with me, and she's a great friend. She's very talented. I love her a lot. Shout out to her. Shout out to my adventurous girlfriends, Rachel, Ashley, and Cherokee, who were my girlfriends in the East Coast that spent some time going on these great adventures for me. Shout out to the Butchery in Vermont. Little River Inn in Stowe was the best B&B I stayed in. Shout out to Johnny Blaze, my boy John. I'm so happy I went to high school with him, and being able to take some adventures with him, I'm looking forward to that. Sky's the limit. And shout out to all my new friends that I'm going to make, and all the people I'm going to adventure with, because I want to hang out with you.
I'm a little disappointed all day. Not a single shout out to Gordon Ramsay.
He doesn't even know I exist. If I'm gonna shoot out to one of the celebrities, I may be Gary Clark Jr. because he was cool cat, man.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. Always remember, the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if you spent the afternoon hanging by your gator from a root. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.
Embrace the suck.